Hey friends, welcome to week 3 of our spring semester for art class. Now, since this week is Dr. Martin Luther King week, we are going to be listening to a story about Martin Luther King. Now, some of you guys may know who he is, some people may not, and that's all right. Dr. Martin Luther King is a very important person in our history because he taught a lot of people that it's important never to judge someone by the way they look or the color of their skin. But what really matters is what's inside, right? How we are on the inside, what our hearts look like. So he completely changed our country and made it so that people of color can vote and go to the same restaurants as everybody else. And I know there's been a lot of crazy stuff going on in our country that recently, and it can feel really overwhelming. But this day is really important because we can remember how far we've come and how good it is that this man taught so many people how to be kind and love people for their character or the way that they are inside. So today we're going to be making some really cool kindness art journals, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what that means in a minute. And once we start adding our art to them and writing in them, we're going to listen to a story about Martin Luther King. And it's a really cool story, and it's true because this is the life he lived. So go ahead and make sure you have your art materials ready and we can get started. Today, we are not only going to be using our usual art materials like something to write with and something to write on, but we're going to be using some scissors. Now, if you don't have scissors, I will show you how to do this by tearing the paper. You have to be very careful, but I was able to do it the other day without scissors, and I think you can do it too. For this assignment, if you don't have any loose copy paper or lined paper around, you can try to tear some out of a sketchbook. That's what I had to do the other day. So very carefully try to tear some paper out of a sketchbook, and then it'll be nice and loose so we can fold it because we're going to be making some awesome little tiny books today. All right, friends. So the first thing we're going to do is take our piece of paper and carefully fold it in half. So I'll take one end and I'll match the corners as well as I can. Make sure they're matching on both sides. This is the part I struggle with. I've never been very good at folding, but that's all right. We're going to practice today. And so once you match them, pull your fingers back while you're holding it on this side, and then squish it on each side. All right, and I'm going to use my fingernail to make sure it's a really good fold. If you want, you can use your scissors, the handle, and that also helps make the fold really nice. All right, now I'm going to open my paper back up, and I'm going to fold it in half the other way. So we're just going to do the same thing, matching those corners. Holding them in place, and then pulling back and smushing it on each side. Oop, and you know what? Mine got a little weird, so I'm going to fix it. All right, that's more like it. So now that I have the fold I want, I can go back to either using my fingernail or those scissors to make sure that crease is really nice. All right, so now I'm going to fold my paper in. So here's how this is going to work. You know how we have that crease right here in the middle? I'm going to take one end of my paper and I'm going to line it up with that crease. So I'll put my thumb on the crease just so I can find it. And I'm going to line this up right in the middle with that crease. And once it's lined up, and I'll smush it again. And do the same thing we've done before. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'll turn it around, take this side, and fold it in. Remember, if this is too fast, you can always pause the video and go back as many times as you want. So, once you guys do this, you're going to think I'm crazy. You're going to open it all up again. So now, we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sections that are folded in our paper. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to fold it back in half, like hamburger style. And I'm going to put a dot right in the middle so I know where I'm cutting to. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my scissors, and so this is the side that has the edge. You don't want to cut this side. This is the side with the fold. This is the side that we are going to cut. So remember, this part's open. We're not cutting the edge, right? Just the fold. So I'll take my scissors now, and I'm very carefully going to cut along the fold until I meet that dot, and then I'm going to stop, and that's it. So now do you guys see how there's this little thing? Now this is cool. Once I open it back up, I'm going to pinch it together, pull it apart, and whoa, can you guys believe that? See how it's now like a star? And that way, when we fold it, it becomes like a little tiny book. This is called a zine. So when we open it, there's some pages. And we can create our very own little kindness notebook. All right, at this point, if you don't have scissors, this is what I want you guys to do. We're going to fold it this way one more time. And we're really going to use our fingernail, especially on that middle part, over and over again, so that we can start making that fold a little bit stronger. And I'm going to open it up and fold it the other way and do the same thing, because this will help us to tear a straight line when we start to tear our paper. And if you want, this is kind of gross, but you can even get it a little bit wet with either some water or some spit. I would do water just because it's a little cleaner, but it's up to you guys. So once you do this and you scratch that fold out, we're going to open it up, fold it hamburger style. Of course, just like before, I want to put a little mark in the middle so that I know where I'm tearing to. And then remember, we're not tearing from the edge of the paper, we're tearing from the folded part, right? So I'll go in and very carefully start tearing along that line. And if it's not perfect, that's okay. My first one wasn't perfect, but it still turned out right. So now, once I get to that little dot, I'm going to stop. And now it works the same way. So I open it up. If I pinch my two sides and then pull them out, bam, I have my book. Pretty cool, huh? Now, if you want, you can start working on your art and your writing while your book is in book form. I think that's probably the easiest. But if it drives you crazy to work on it while it's folded like this, here's what I want you to do first. On the bottom corner, you're going to very lightly with your pencil in the numbers of your pages. So I'll do 1, 2, make sure they're in the same corner, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So remember, I put all of them in this bottom right-hand corner, right? So when I unfold it, Do you guys see how some of my numbers are upside down and some of them are not? So if you decide you want to draw on it this way, you need to make sure that you're following the order, because if you notice, I have 1, 2, 3 here, but then 4's over here, 5's over here, and then 8's over here. So we need to make sure that if you're working on your paper this way, that you know what the bottom is and you know what order they're in. That way, I can grab these two sides, pull them apart, and put them back in my book. When you close it, we put them in the right order, right? Now there's a few different ways you guys can use these kindness journals. The cool thing about what Dr. Martin Luther King did is that he helped people to realize that when we all come together to make a positive change, things start to happen. So you guys will learn a little bit more about that. But what I want you to think about is if all of us start being more kind to each other, we're really going to make an impact on this world and on our city. So here's what I did for my kindness journal. And you guys can come up with ideas and tell me about them too. But in my kindness journal, the first thing I did was I made a list of nice or kind things I can do to change somebody else's day. So one of them was take out the trash so my husband doesn't have to. I checked that one off since I already did it. Another one was cuddling with my babies, and I went ahead and did that, so I checked it off. And a few other things that I want to do are give someone a compliment. So maybe I can say something nice to make somebody's day better. Make a card for a friend so that maybe I can brighten someone's day and make them be nicer to somebody else. Who knows? I also think I need to call my grandma because I haven't talked to my grandma in a while. And I also left a little blank spot in case I come up with anything else. You guys can come up with your own list of how you can love and be kind to your family and the people who you see every day. Then, after I made my list, I started drawing what happened when I did things that were nice. So I went ahead and drew a picture of me cuddling with my babies. We all had a really nice, relaxing time. And I also drew a picture of myself taking out the garbage. And just doing something nice for someone sometimes makes you feel better. So I want you guys to think about how you can fill these pages with kind things or ideas that you can use to brighten someone's day and change their world. So while we start decorating these and thinking about what to add, we're going to listen to this story.
I am Martin Luther King Jr. The author is Brad Meltzer, illustrated by Christopher Eliopoulos. I am Martin Luther King Jr. When I was little, I used to get into a lot of accidents. One day, my little brother hit me in the head with a baseball bat. 2 other times, I mistakenly got knocked over by a car. Another day, I tumbled over a banister, then bounced through an open door into the basement. No matter how many times I fell, I kept getting back up. Even before I could read, I knew I liked books. My dad always talked about how I kept a lot of books around me. I used to tell my parents, when I grow up, I'm going to get me some big words. There is a power in words. Big words were in my future. When I was 6 years old, one of my best friends was a boy whose father owned a store across the street. My friend was white. I was black. It didn't matter to us. We would play games and have fun together. But when we started going to school, everything changed. He went to school where all the kids were white. I went to school where all the kids were black. Soon after, he told me, I can't play with you anymore. Why? My dad said so. He doesn't want us being friends. But why? You're one of my best friends, aren't you? Aren't you? I didn't understand it. It didn't make sense. At dinner, my parents explained, it's because you're black and he's white. I was so mad that day. How could someone treat me differently just because of the color of my skin? I wanted to hate my friend and his father, but my parents told me to do the opposite, that I should love my friend even though he hurt me. They taught me that it's better to have more love in your life than more hate. Then my mother taught me one of the most important lessons of all. She said, "You are as good as anyone. You must never feel that you are less than anyone else." I wanted to believe it, but every day I saw the opposite. I saw you could be treated unfairly just because of the color of your skin. If you were white, you went to a good school with great playgrounds and plenty of books. If you were black, your school was small, sometimes with no desks or even windows. It wasn't just the schools. Black people had to use different water fountains, different elevators, even different bathrooms. In fact, on a hot day when everyone wanted ice cream, if you were white, you can sit at the counter and eat from a nice dish. But since I was black, if they served me at all, it was through a side window and they put my ice cream in a flimsy paper cup. It got even worse when I was 14. I had just won a speech competition. My speech was about being fair to all people. I was so excited. Then, on the bus ride home, a few white people got on board. At first, I stayed put. It didn't seem fair, but my teacher convinced me to move. We spent the rest of the ride standing and getting tossed in every direction. It was the angriest I have ever been. Every day, that is what life was like. Black people were treated terribly. The only question was, what could I do about it? At the age of 15, I started college. By 19, I became a minister and entered seminary school to study religion. In no time at all, I got my chance. In Alabama, a black woman named Rosa Parks was told to give up her bus seat to a white man. It was just like what happened to me. But unlike me, Miss Parks refused. She was arrested. Early the next morning, I got a phone call from a local community leader. Instead of using violence to protest the unfair rules, black people would use a peaceful method. We would not ride the public buses. Without our money, the bus companies would go out of business. Now the only question was, would it work? On the first day of the protest, my wife called me to the window. "The buses are all empty. It's working." We had to keep it going. As the head of the bus boycott, I gave one of the most important speeches of my life. The room was packed. Camera crews were filming. I had only 20 minutes to prepare. I didn't use notes, but by speaking from my heart, I found out how big words can be. The police put me in jail saying I was breaking the law. Other folks bombed my house, but instead of using my fists, I kept my calm. For more than a full year, every black person in the city, and some white people too, refused to ride the buses. That meant some people had to walk for miles, but they kept going. There was a power in standing together. Eventually, our peaceful protest worked. The rules were changed. Public buses could no longer separate people based on the color of their skin. That was only the beginning. Soon our peaceful protests sparked other peaceful protests. At lunch counters, college students organized sit-ins where they would not stop until everyone could eat together. Our methods of nonviolence were so powerful, I was invited to meet with the president at the White House. But sometimes the hardest problems were right at home. Seeing my daughter cry was one of the most painful moments of my life. It only made me work harder for change. Was it easy? Absolutely not. During one protest in Birmingham, Alabama, the police again arrested me and locked me in a dark jail cell that had only one window. Someone slipped me a newspaper in which white religious leaders had written an article calling us lawbreakers. Someone then snuck me a pen. In that jail cell, I wrote my own response in the margins of the newspaper and even on toilet paper. My letter from Birmingham jail was soon published as a pamphlet. Then it was in magazines and newspapers. Today, it has been read by millions of people. Like I said, it is amazing how big words can be. Our message was so important, even kids your age joined us. In Birmingham, during the Children's Crusade, more than 1,000 kids, some as young as 6 years old, showed up to march. The first day, the police arrested 900 of them. The next day, 2,500 children showed up ready to go to jail. This was our finest hour. Enraged that we were not giving up, the chief of police told the firemen to spray the children with water hoses and attack them with dogs. They thought it would stop us, but instead, as the whole country watched on TV what they were doing to our children, it was a wake-up call for the nation's conscience. 90 days later, the rules began to change. Now blacks and whites in Birmingham were using the same lunch counters, water fountains, and restrooms. You can feel it in the air. More change was coming. Freedom was contagious. By the summer of 1963, an estimated of 1 million Americans held their own protests in cities across the country. A man named A. Philip Randolph suggested a massive march. People came from almost every state. They came in nearly every form of transportation. They even took off work and did not get paid just to be there. Old people, young people, black people, white people, even children like you. They all came to Washington, D.C., gathering in a righteous army. Why? Because they wanted a change, and they knew the surest way to change the world is to stand together. On August 28, 1963, I stood at the podium and spoke what some later called my biggest words of all. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream that one day little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. Let freedom ring from every mountainside. Let freedom ring. After the March on Washington, the President and Congress passed new laws for civil rights, but that didn't mean our work was done. Indeed, our greatest battle was still to come. It began with 600 activists as they tried to walk 54 miles from Selma, Alabama, to the state capital of Montgomery. Back then, there were rules that stopped black people from voting. If you wanted to change the laws, you have to be able to vote for new people who make the laws. The police had billy clubs and tear gas. They attacked our group and knocked many people down. But, as I learned so long ago, you have to get back up. No matter how hard they hit us, we remained peaceful. Still, we didn't get through. 2 days later, we tried again. Now there were 2,500 of us. Once again, we tried. Once again, we did not get through. Did we give up? What do you think? It was Sunday, March 21st, 1965, our third try. Now we had 8,000 people with us. For 2 days, we marched. Rain could not stop us. The world was watching. The White House was too. President Johnson even sent troops to protect us. Exhaustion could not stop us. As we reached Montgomery, Alabama, tears were shed. But this time, there were tears of joy. In my life, people try to tell me I wasn't as good as they were just because of the color of my skin. When someone hurts you like that, it can be tempting to hurt them back. You must refuse. When someone shows you hate, show them love. When someone shows you violence, show them kindness. To reach our goals, we must walk the path of peace. We must lock arms with our brothers and sisters. We must march together. When we do, our voices will be heard and freedom will ring. I am Martin Luther King Jr. I stand for peace. I stand for justice. I stand to help others. I stand as proof that no matter how hard the struggle, we must fight for what is right and work to change what is wrong. Whatever struggle you face, no matter how hard it gets, you must always move forward. I am proof of this. If we rise up, if we stand together, if we remain united, nothing can stop our dream. And that's the end of I Am Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King saw a great need and he worked hard to produce change. Here's my question. Is there anything unfair that you see in your community? And if so, what are you willing to do to address it?
Isn't that an awesome story? Even with all of the hardships and the unfairness that he was dealing with, Martin Luther King still stood up for what he believed in, and he stood up for other people, encouraging them to do the same. But he also was kind while doing it. So I just wanted you guys to think about that. How can we stand up for what is right when we see something that's unfair? Or if you see someone being treated unkindly or left out, how can we handle that situation? And the other beautiful thing about what Martin Luther King believed is that it doesn't matter what we look like on the outside. That's not how we should be judging people. All that matters is what we're like on the inside. You guys are so valuable. You are each one of you special and unique in your own way. So don't let anyone tell you different. And I'm really excited to see how you guys decide to change the world, because when you start treating people kindly and brightening other people's days, you really do make a difference. Here's your objectives for today. Number 1, I can practice carefully folding my paper. And number 2, I can practice using scissors or carefully tearing my paper. En español, número 1. Yo puedo practicar doblando cuidadosamente mi papel. Número 2. Yo puedo practicar usando tijeras o rasgando cuidadosamente mi papel. I wanted to say thank you to Miss Melange, who recorded the wonderful story that we read today. And if you want to hear other books that she reads, she has a wonderful channel called Storytime with Miss Melange. And I'll put a link in here too so you guys can listen to what she does.